Good morning. I'm Dan Tupper, District 3 Commissioner and President of the Board. This is a special meeting of the Jefferson County PUD Board of Commissioners. It is Thursday, August 12th, 2021. It is at 10:02 a.m. By the direction of the PUD Board of Commissioners and in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Jefferson County PUD is no longer providing an in-person room for meetings of the BOC. All meetings will be held remotely via Zoom. Participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise your hand if you wish to speak. With that, I will ask for commissioner introductions to determine a quorum for the audio.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner, District 2.
Jeff Randall, Commissioner, District 1.
Thank you, gentlemen. With that, we will move on to, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda presented today? Not seeing anyone with waving a hand here or saying that there's anything that needs to be done. So with that, I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll move
to
go ahead, Ken.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
I will second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we have an approved agenda. So with that, we will move on to item 3, presentation of the draft strategic plan. Just a note before we start, as a professional courtesy, I sent George Kahn and Liz Anderson a thank you for their guidance and input over the past several years on strategic planning, and invited them to listen in on our meeting today if they were so inclined. Also yesterday at the Waputa Education Steering Committee meeting, the topics of strategic planning and succession planning will be upcoming topics at Waputa committee meetings for staff and commissioners' knowledge there. So, all right, with that, we will get back on course here and introductions. Kevin?
So I'm going to start out and actually not do introductions because I think we all know who's here. And I'm going to start out with some thank yous. This strategic plan was put together by staff, but we had guidance. And without that guidance, this plan would not have come out like it did. I'd like to thank Kurt, Joel, Don, and Alicia. They have done an awesome job keeping staff on track. And at times when things would get a little contentious, which they did, they moved it along. And the results you see, I think, speak for themselves. I am extremely pleased from what they have done. The next thing I would like to do is talk a little bit about staff. Mike, Sam, Scott, Jean, Will, and Melanie have worked very hard to put this together. We didn't always agree at the start, but at the finish, everyone felt we had done what needed to be done. There was a lot of compromise by a lot of people. A lot of one word would change the meaning of the sentence, and it would be debated and talked about. And with guidance from the group, this document was put together. It was, like I say, at times it was not easy because we have 6 great directors, and they all have different views and see things coming out different. That's the beauty of a strategic plan, though. It puts everyone on the same page and we all have some guiding principles. So this document will be great moving forward. Plus, I'm going to say the sheer process, how we put it together, has helped me and the directors come together and work closer together. So just that aspect alone, this process was a win. I know we have taken longer than we expected to do this, but with the positives that came out of the process, I just feel, like I say, the directors have done an awesome job and they deserve a lot of credit. We're assuming with board's direction This will be the first of at least 3 meetings. We feel there will be 2 additional meetings, maybe more, depending on how things come out. Again, this is the first step. Once you have a strategic plan adopted, then it runs into, well, what do you fund in your budget? How do you move projects forward? So once the plan is put in place, behind the scenes, staff is going to start working on a process and plans on how to implement different things and to make sure we have measurable goals moving forward. That's very important, and that's the task that the directors will take up next. The timing is going to be close because we're already in budget season, but in some ways, I think that's going to be a benefit to us because the strategic plan is so new. Budgeting, I think it'll marry well together. So I would like to thank the commissioners for being patient and working with us on this process. I know this is your first time to see the paperwork, and I hope you're as excited as I am on the starting point. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kirk and let him get started.
Kirk, you're muted. You're muted again. Kirk, you're still muted. Still muted. There you are.
Okay, sorry. I'd say it's an age thing, but I think it's just competence. But anyways, I am Kirk Gibson, and I'm proud to be part of this. I go way back with this PUD, and I'm invested in this. And I want to say that what we've done here, I think, is a wonderful collaborative product. And I support the comments that Kevin said about the team. It was a wonderful process, and I think that we're all in it collectively. And you'll see that as we go through the product. Now, it's my hope to go through here and sort of present all of it and have a leadership team bring in some perspective at the times when we go through the various functions. Certainly the commissioners, I work at their desire, whatever they want to do, but I'd like to get through the presentation because I believe it'll show the strategic plan as a whole. And that's important. And then we can get into any kind of discussions that they would have. So let's go and move on to the just the overview of the strategic planning. And the next one there, Will, thanks. So the important thing we got to acknowledge in this is that the strategic planning does mean different things to different people. And you know, those individuals that are familiar with the last strategic plan of the PUD will note some differences throughout this product. And that's because this leadership team has taken ownership of the process and the product. So the strategic planning overview, and I'm going to take the liberty of reading these things to you, but I'm going to read them pretty fast so it doesn't sound like I'm reading a story to you. But the PUD strategic plan is developed by the leadership of the organization and used to communicate the goals and objectives to achieve the PUD's mission and vision. So what will the PUD look like in the future, you know, and where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years? And then, of course, with the measurement that Kevin talked about, what will success look like? Okay, so I want to say that this strategic plan, with its well-reasoned goals and objectives, which you'll see, is designed to inform the commissioners and the public that this leadership team has a vision for the PUD, and it'll take the necessary steps to work towards that vision in sync with the PUD's mission. So let's move over to the plan for today's presentation, the table of contents. Thanks. So, you know, the introduction Kevin did, we're going to talk about the participants and then a quick overview of the process. And we can get into that later if you'd like to get into more details. And then what I'll call the structure of the strategic plan, the mission, the values, and the vision. And then we'll go into goals and objectives by function. And then after each section of the is reviewed by function, we're going to look to the leadership team to provide further insight and perspective as we go through here. So quickly with the introduction that's in the PowerPoint is that let's move. Will, thanks. Next, thank you. It was this was a long process, as Kevin said. It was initiated back in 2020, but COVID sort of put us on our heels. And then we really decided that in the fall, last fall, to say, look, we got to move forward anyways. So, that required us to do more writing, more work exercises and questionnaires. And I got to say, from the persons of the facilitator's perspective, it may have resulted in a more reflective plan, one that the leadership team has embraced, because it wasn't like 3 hours in a room and talking about these and putting sticky notes up. It was a time between tasks to respond. And I think we've gotten some very thoughtful and great input. So let's go to the next page. I'm going to quickly go over these. You know everybody, and that's great. Next page. These are the outside people that helped, that Kevin brought out. And let's go to the overview of the process. So quickly, what we did was we started with what I would call a practical, pragmatic approach to strategic planning. Often it's academic, and you start with mission statements and vision statements. But we because of the new team and just the circumstances, we started off with an analysis of the facts, a common fact base. What was our business model, what it is, and how, and we assessed it. And then we went to the vision and mission and the strategic imperatives. What must the PUD do? And then we developed the goals and objectives. And I want to say that this practical approach was good for the new team because it gives them a fresh approach, and it's really based on the collective understanding of where the PUD is right now. And then the team wanted to make their decisions during this process based on a shared, mutually agreed set of data and assumptions. Everybody has to understand what the sort of the collective belief is of where the PUD is before we can move forward, and that's what they did. And again, the next step would be the work plan, what are we going to do in 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, and what are the measurables that Kevin spoke about. So let's go to the mission statement. And I am hurrying, but I think it'll all come together at the end. But the mission statement is basically a statement of the PUD's purpose, or its fundamental reason for existing, a statement of its PUD's strategic intent. So, and then this, although it's a one tight sentence here, it took a long time to get there. And as Kevin mentioned, like one word could change things, and it created a whole nother maybe 20, 30 minutes of dialogue, which was great in the end. But to better the lives of our community through the delivery of essential utility services each and every day. And that's a statement of the PUD's purpose, the fundamental reason for it to exist. Now, I want to note here, particularly for the commissioner's benefit and the public, that it's not lost on this PUD's leadership team that the people of Jefferson County had a working water and sewer PUD, and they basically flexed their constitutional muscle to take over the electric facilities at Puget Sound. You'll see throughout this, and you do here in the mission statement, a theme of community and utility in the broadest sense of the term. It's not water utility, it's not electric utility, it's not the broadband coming down the path, it's a utility for the people. And that's throughout this 2021 plan, and I think it really provides the perspective of this leadership team and the PUD as it moves forward. So let's go to the values. Now the values are guiding principles that never change, enduring core beliefs, and they're convictions that influence the attitudes and behaviors. And importantly, it's part of the strategic foundation that you do it. And I want to just take a moment and say a quote, probably not a famous one, from Peter Drucker, and he said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And you can have the best strategies, but if you don't have this culture, it just doesn't work. And I'm going to just take you through the values that the team felt were important for the PUD. It exhibited what the PUD is about and should be about, is the way I'll say it. Innovative, sustainable, future-focused, responsive and engaged, service-driven, solution-oriented, act with integrity and respect, accountable to the community and each other, work openly and transparently, safe and reliable, collaborative. And I want to say that these are the shared values of the PUD. And we used what they call word salads from some of the work exercises that were prepared by the leadership to create what was the emphasis and desires of the leadership team to come up with those particular list of that particular list. Let's go to the vision. So the vision statement, technically it's the level of success, reputation, excellence, or accomplishment to which we as an organization wish to aspire and commit ourselves. It should provide long-term direction and state what kind of organization the PUD is trying to become. And here it is, the best utility in the Northwest and a leader in our community. Again, utility and community is a great theme to go through. Now, just a moment to step back, and if you think of a bridge going over a body of water that goes from one land to the other land, and it has two piers carrying the bridge across, we're at the point now where the first bridge support is the mission, the values, and the SWOT analysis that we went through to get to this point as to what we want to do. Now, the next whole structure that holds the bridge is the strategic plan, goals, and objectives. And that gets us to the other side of the river, which is where our vision is. So we're going to go into the goals and objectives. And again, the common fact base that was everybody saw where the PUD was, it aligned our PUDs, then we aligned the mission and the vision, identified the values, and we used those to develop the strategic focus through the goals and objectives, and that is to achieve the vision. So let's go to the first one of the functions, and that's the organization goals. And this is the organization as a whole, the PUD. And here we go. The organizational goals is to incorporate those values that we just looked at into all aspects of the organization. And that's hiring. That's day-to-day meetings, those kind of issues. Be considered the best employer in Jefferson County. Maintain customer service levels that meet customer needs and promote coordination and teamwork between PUD departments. Now on to the objectives that go with these goals. Next one, please. Thank you. Maintain regularly scheduled strategic leadership teams. Incorporate PUD values with daily activities. Communicate clear expectations to employees, develop employee recognition programs and cross-training opportunities, and enhance access to appropriate levels of training, supervision, and PUD resources for employers. And I'd like to just turn it over to the leadership team for any perspective or insight that they'd like to put with these organizational objectives.
Hi all, this is Jean. Can you hear me okay? I'm having some issues.
You
We
sound
can hear
great.
you, Jean.
Yeah, we can hear you, Gene.
Okay, sorry, I had to call in. I lost my computer connection. So our maintain customer service level that meet customers' needs. This goal really encompasses all departments and is at the heart of most PUD goals. It speaks to communication, reliability, rate stability, staffing levels, and how knowledgeable that staff is, the quality of utility services that we provide, and the continuity of that high standard of service, both across departments and over time.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Hi. Oh, is that
Go
you,
ahead,
Melanie?
Sam.
Okay. Hi, this is Samantha. I wanted to kind of briefly touch on one of the objectives of communicating clear expectations to employees. I think this is really important for employees to be on the same page and to be aligned with the PUD mission, values, and goals and objectives. And communication really helps to ensure that all employees are pulling in the same direction and on the same page. Sorry, go ahead, Melanie.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. And just to add on to that too, that communication, part of the goal of this strategic leadership meeting that we have now scheduled on Wednesdays is a part of creating more cohesive communication among our leadership team. And sharing department updates and what our goals are, how we move forward as an organization. And I also wanted to touch on the PUD values, how we will incorporate the PUD values with daily activities. Kirk touched on this, and I really feel that these guiding principles, they guide our work in the way we prioritize our efforts, how we make decisions, how we serve our customers, and ultimately how our employees operate too. So I think these values are helpful in creating policies for our employees, even procedures. So I was really pleased with the values that we came up with, and I think they're important for how we move forward as an organization.
Thank you. Any else? Okay, moving on. Thanks, Jean, Samantha, and Melanie. The financial goals. And I'll say this now, is the financial goals and the rate goals were separated that last strategic plan by the PUD, and the leadership team believed that they should still remain separate. And we'll get into that a little when we talk about the rate goals, but the financial goals, and that's to maintain and protect the financial stability of the PUD, fund 5-year financial plan for capital investments and ongoing maintenance, and meet required financial ratios and regulatory compliance. And on to the financial objectives. There'll be a reporting of the monthly financial results and monitor revenues from the rates to ensure that the revenues are sufficient to meet the financial goals. Manage principal cost drivers of the cost of service for each PUD service and use financial forecasts to meet the financial goals. Monitor and plan for impact of upcoming contract terms proposed by the Bonneville Power Administration and on the PUD's cost recovery capability. And then monitor the plan for potential costs and impacts of meeting the Clean Energy Transformation Act requirements, and identify sources and funding for investment for broadband service initiative. Leadership team.
So I'd just like to add that, through the annual budgets, we'll be able to meet the financial goals as well as other goals in the strategic plan. We'll involve the board during the budget planning process to keep them informed of the financial stability of the board or of the PUD. The finance team still continue to provide monthly financial reports to the board, email updates as necessary, and supplement the financial reports with the online public dashboards. We'll begin using a 10-year financial forecast model created by Moss Adams to assist with budgeting and show how rate adjustments, borrowing, and other scenarios will affect the financials. And we'll continue to report on key rate ratio indicators on an annual basis to show compliance with loan covenants and regulatory requirements. And then with the online dashboards, we'll keep the commissioners and the public up to date on financial information.
Thanks, Mike. Any others?
Hi, this is Samantha again. I just wanted to kind of have an overarching of how important it is to systematically fund and reinvest into the PUD's aging infrastructure, and also tracking and monitoring expenses ensures good financial decision-making and moving projects forward. Thank you.
Any others? Well, I'm going to take the liberty of adding that the managing the principal cost drivers of the cost of service for each PUD service is a collective of the objective of the entire leadership team, and that'll go in those meetings that were discussed, and how everything in the PUD affects every service that's provided. Let's move on to the operation goals. And these are to provide reliable and efficient utility service to all customers, plan for long-term capital investment in PUD services, plan for meeting regulatory requirements, define the extent of the service offering and timing of implementation of the PUD's broadband service initiative, and optimize efforts on safety of the PUD workforce and community. Let's move to the objectives that go with those goals, and that's to review and monitor service interruptions to improve reliability. Build process for interdepartmental exchange of information to enhance coordination by and between the departments. Review, monitor, and enhance internal processes to capture interdepartmental efficiencies. Complete business plan for new service initiatives. Create team to monitor developments concerning regulatory requirements. Identify the PUD's obligations and plan to meet those obligations. Review departmental processes for keeping customers informed of utility projects and services in a timely manner. Maintain continuous communication and training on safety issues, and review capital investment plan annually. Our leadership team.
Yes, this is Scott. Jefferson County PUD is striving to upgrade the facilities throughout its service territory and bring new methods of tree trimming and ground clearing to help harden our system from threats of wildfire. And we will continue to do that and continue to strive to get better. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Others?
Hi, this is Samantha. All of these goals and objectives are really important. Providing our customers with the reliable and efficient utilities through planning, working together, timely maintenance, and investing in our infrastructure is very important. And at the forefront of all of this work is keeping the workforce and our community safe. And I support all of these goals and objectives that we have laid out as a leadership team.
Thanks, Samantha. Okay, let's move on to rate goals. Now, as I mentioned earlier, they used to be separate. Sorry about that. Separate and from finance, but we the leadership team felt. I mean, and I think it's true. Is all parts of the PUD have a part in the rates and how the rates are affected. But let's go with the rate goals, and that's maintain rates that cover the cost of service and satisfy the PUD's financial metrics and debt covenants. Ensure the ability of the revenues generated by each utility department to support the financial policy including planned infrastructure development. And then provide appropriate cost signals to customers. Rate objectives, reduce the number of rate adjustments. Be transparent regarding cost drivers of rates for PUD services. Make people understand what causes the rates to go up. In other words, minimize size of any percentage adjustments to rates and educate customers on rate structures and conservation measures. Leadership team.
Looks like Commissioner Randall has his hand raised.
I didn't mean to cut you off before you went through that slide, but I did want to ask a question on this one, if it's okay right now. And it relates to, let's see here, reduce the number of rate adjustments and minimize size of any percentage adjustments to rates. And I guess I'm kind of curious as to what you're thinking there, because there are two different schools of thoughts on adjusting rates. One is to do it infrequently, but if you adjust rates infrequently, you mathematically are increasing the percentage of the jump versus having more frequent, smaller adjustments to rates. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about the language in there and what staff was getting at.
Well, I can start off, and then certainly staff should put any other insight in there. But generally, you want to reduce the number of rate adjustments if you can, and live within your means, keep your budgeting tight, and not adjust rates. Always, everybody loves when they go down, but that is rare. The minimizing the size of percentage adjustments, I think goes more to the you'll remember the cost drivers and having everyone understand what the cost drivers and educating the community as. When you do this, this is how it affects the PUD. So it goes into the education and communication, the operations of how they're going to look at the cost drivers for each utility and how they go towards those rates. And that would be my comment. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive because of the perspective of what's going on to keep minimize the size of percentage adjustments. If I keep my belt tight or I find ways to do cost savings, I reduce the number of rate adjustments that are necessary, and also would, if they are necessary, because we got to keep our ratios. We got to keep, there are definite bookends on what we have to do, but there's ways that we can manage those better. And I'll turn it over to the
And
staff.
I'll jump in here real quick. I do think part of the director's responsibility is to work hard so we don't have to have rate adjustments by tightening the belt, trying to get another year from a reclosure, if practical and it doesn't cause any safety or reliability issues. So I think they're different items. You know, a lot of time rate increases because of the Bonneville power rate increases. And it doesn't go hand in hand, but even a small Bonneville power increase could be postponed a year and not necessarily have any larger percentage of the second year as it did in the first year, as long as we're all pulling together and trying to keep our costs down and doing as much as we can with our existing infrastructure and employees. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Tupper. So I appreciate, what Jeff had to say there, and I understand kind of what he's talking about. My thought on this is for the, with this document, with the strategic plan, we have other processes and other policies that are going to augment or complement this plan. I guess one of the questions is how specific do we want to get in the strategic plan? And I'm in the camp of, I don't want to be vague, but I also don't want to get too finite either. So having said all that, I don't think that we necessarily need to put any finer points on this because this is a living document. We're going to review this every year. And as we go through it, we may make those decisions as a board as to pass through of rates, increases or decreases, or how often we may want to do a cost of service. Those are things that are going to show up in other documents, other policies, and other processes. So that's kind of in a way, an answer to Jeff from my viewpoint as a fellow commissioner.
Yeah, and I'll so I hear what staff is saying, and I don't disagree with it. I appreciate the clarification. And I think maybe what would be helpful, rather than just saying reduce number of rate adjustments, maybe say something like reduce number of rate adjustments by trying to look for savings in operations or whatever. I mean, Kevin said it, multiple people kind of said it, but that doesn't, reduce number of rate adjustments doesn't really say how or kind of why, but if you added a little bit more, I think it would be clear about what the intent is there. And again, I love what you said in the beginning, culture trumps strategy. And what we're trying to do is say, this is the culture of the PUD. Let's first seek efficiencies with how we operate the organization before we go out and ask for more money. If that's part of the culture, awesome. And I just think maybe a little bit additional there could help clarify that.
Oh, thank you. I guess my two thoughts are that I want to point out is in the financial objectives, manage principal cost drivers of the cost of service for each PUD service. And then we look at the operations objectives. It's review, monitor, and enhance internal processes to capture interdepartmental efficiencies. Your comments are certainly valid. Often when we were going through this document to keep the document tight, and I'll use Commissioner Tupper's words, vague, not finite. We relied on the interrelated nature of the various functions. And but I mean, your comment, your phrase by trying to look for savings, et cetera, could be absolutely incorporated. But I just wanted to point out to you what I'll call the beauty of the document is when you look at the operations objectives and the finance objectives, they are working towards that to get to the rate objectives. So again, it's a document as a whole. But thank you for all that, and that's for the team to look at for sure.
Okay, well, and I'll just throw in here again. So I'm a commissioner. I'm an educated person in the PUD. I think what you want to avoid is people down the road taking different interpretations of something. And it sounded like the rate stuff was initially with the financial stuff. And I think by removing it from the financial stuff, I didn't reach that conclusion. So you may feel like it's all, you read the whole thing together, it all makes sense, but another point is you've kind of by removing this from those other phrases, I think it weakens the connection a little bit, but I don't need to go on with this. I've made my point, and I like what the intent of the language is.
Well, thanks, and I appreciate it. And two comments, just to be clear, is the rate and the finance was separate, and we've kept them separate. But I think your comment goes to the heart of, if I look at the words, reduced number of rate adjustments, and just look at those, and then I start pulling on your sleeve saying, hey, you said you were going to reduce the number of rate adjustments, and it doesn't have something like by trying to look for savings. The person that takes it out of context could easily start banging on the PUD when, if it says by trying to look for savings, here's what the savings we were, but it could not counteract the BPA's increase. So I take it. And then also with respect to vague and not too finite, the work plan will get into a little more finite, hopefully some measurements and goals for first year, 3 years, 5 years type thing. Okay, thank you.
Kirk,
Yeah.
if I could, I mean, maybe the other thing that comes to mind is that, even though we kept the financial objectives and rate objectives separate, maybe, upon further reflection, there's a way to integrate them, to make them that way. Just a thought.
Good point. I mean, there's no reason for them to be separate. It's just how the PUD would like to present it. Okay, with that, let's go to the communication goals. Enhance public perception and trust in the PUD, raise the profile of the PUD locally and regionally, provide consistent PUD-wide messaging, align PUD messaging efforts with community partners. And the objectives are to keep communication channels updated with clear, timely information on PUD issues, coordinate public communications from staff and commissioners to maintain consistent messaging, develop a coordinated approach to the PUD departmental messaging, increase public education on PUD activities and programs, be community resource for utility-related information and services, and engage in a regular and ongoing dialogue with customers and community members across all available communication mediums. That's some content with the leadership team.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add or clarify in there. I think we've done a great job in the last few years of broadening our channels. But something that I looked at is in the marketing rule of 7, you want to be able to touch on an issue 7 times and in 7 different ways. And we've done a great job of getting things out 7 different ways, but we don't always follow up enough on doing it 7 times. So we want to keep getting more messages out there, do follow-ups, and continue using all those channels. And what was the other part about it? And then, just making sure that our messages are clear enough so they're easy to be understood and shared. Dan?
Thanks, Will. So I'm quite certain in your word salad, the amount of times that I use the term communication or communications or messaging in my exercises probably single-handedly made this one of the top word topics. On the previous page where it said align PUD messaging efforts with community partners, that's one that people could maybe look at it from different aspects and maybe get a misunderstanding there. I think that we need to be somewhat, and I don't know what the verbiage would be, or maybe I'm wrong here, but that this has to be the dog wagging the tail, not the tail wagging the dog. So when we say align with partners, the perception by people is that we need to put their message first, not our message. And I think we need to be a little clearer about that, even though, again, we take input from the public. We're very sensitive to listening to the public, but this document, it represents some of the public will, but this at the end of the day is about how this organization is going to function at a high level and move the ball forward in all of the aspects of the services that we provide.
Thanks. I can see where, work with community partners to get the PUD message out is a lot more direct.
And that's going back to that collaborative value as well. I think has been important value we're trying to pull through.
Yeah, and I don't know that it sends a mixed message by having both bullets, but I think maybe that's a place we might look at the verbiage a little different. That's just one person's opinion.
It's a good point. When we can see those barbs, we should smooth them out a little. Okay, then I'm going to go on to conservation and sustainability goals. Promote efficient use of PUD resources, align PUD policies to reflect community attitudes regarding efficient use of resources, and take a leadership role in community programs to conserve and optimize the efficient use of PUD services. And then over to the objectives. But before we go there, the emphasis here was on efficient use, not like necessarily reducing it, but making it efficient. And then the objectives, plan to reduce the PUD's carbon footprint, increase customers' conservation and sustainability efforts through community partnerships, and develop and fund additional conservation and sustainability programs. And I'll turn it back to the leadership team. Any perspective that someone would like to put in? Not necessary.
No, so I'll speak again. We've had a very successful program with our electric energy efficiency program through Bonneville's funding. We want to continue on that. We're doing exciting work right now with the RUS, our ESP program, where we'll be able to offer potentially on-bill financing that's going to reach a lot more customers, and a lot of customers that are struggling and can really use the efficiency upgrades. And then we're working collaboratively with the water team to develop a water conservation and efficiency program that we're hoping to roll out in the next year.
Thanks, Will.
Hey, and this is Samantha. I just want to kind of tag along on what Will said. Is developing and funding a consistent plan is key for the momentum of our conservation and sustainability message. And kind of to give, like Will did, some statistics. On average, it takes somebody 1 to 20 times of telling them something to remember a message. And if we want to change people's behavior, that's a 1 to 8 month of changing of behavior to make conservation and sustainability part of their forethinking, and not something that, and just to have people remember. So having a consistent program and funding it is a key for us, I believe.
Thanks, Samantha. Kevin?
I'll jump in real quick. I do believe our programs have to reach out to the schools. We've talked about this under staff. I'm getting a little specific here, but communications, and this is, I know, a biggie for Sam, starts really in the grade schools, and so we need to do some outreach to those, and that's part of the plan that'll be developed moving forward. So thank you.
Well, hey, thanks everyone. We are at the end of, in a sense, of this presentation. This is the first part. The next step would be the work plan that Kevin spoke about. I'd like to turn it back to Kevin, but I'd also like to open it up for everybody that was involved in the process, if they have any comments in closing before we sort of turn it back to the commissioners. And I will just stay quiet.
So before I kind of wrap up a little bit, I'm not sure who was first, Dan or Jeff, jump in.
Let's go ahead and let Dawn jump in, since Kirk called for staff and consultants and everyone else before the commissioners take back over here. Go ahead, Dawn.
Well, I guess from my perspective, the cornerstone for any successful implementation of a plan like this really lies within the organization who has to do the work. So starting there with this plan, I think, was a very good idea. And I think Kirk really structured it to help the staff be successful. But I will tell you, this group came prepared. They came to engage. They worked through issues. They worked through cooperation on developing new ideas, and even took some of those new ideas into the implementation of processes and procedures internal to the organization right now. So I think you can be pretty proud of this group. I think it's a very respectable product, and I really appreciated being at the table with them.
Any other staff or consulting that want to weigh in, or Joel, legal?
I'll just echo what Don said, and that it was, I think the process itself was really a great process to go through for all of this team, and I appreciate being included in it. And I think the effort was try to both focus on operational issues, but also broader issues that the commission might consider and have input on, so that it worked both up and down. But thank you. Look forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Joel. Anyone else, staff? So I'll start real quick, and then, this has been a real innovative process for strategic planning. I think even the people, other utilities at Waputa are going to maybe look at us and look at this process and maybe consider this might be another way for them to move forward over the way things have been done in other places and in the past. Thanks to the leadership team, the consulting team on, getting us up to this point. We appreciate the hard work and the commitment to the strategic goals of the utility. And a special, really, a shout out to Kevin, managers' goals and responsibilities and evaluations coming up again, Joel, Don, and Kevin. I just want to throw that out there while I got the opportunity. That's another thing that's still on the radar, and we're at that point again. Kevin and his staff, I think, are exhibiting some growth and unity and really working together towards a higher level of function for this utility. And I couldn't be happier. That's my 2 cents. Thanks.
All right, I'll go next. On that same sort of line, I really appreciate how, we've had this has been stewing for a while, this whole strategic plan effort, and it's really nice to see how much work and results we have at this point. So this is really good. My point, I wanted to just make a comment on the conservation and sustainability objectives, and I really appreciate Will kind of giving a list of all the things that we've accomplished and what we're working towards on the conservation side, and I think we're doing really well there. The one issue that I don't see anywhere in the strategy is local power. And if we think back to the 3 legs of the stool of why we even are where we are right now, it was the campaign for local control, local power, and local jobs. And I think we've talked about the jobs part in earlier on with us being a great employer and so forth. But I think unless we just say, well, it's in the sustainability programs, that's doing local power falls within that. I think it's worth calling out a little bit more, and it could be even something along the lines of exploring opportunities to develop local power. And there's a couple of reasons why. One is not to just rely on BPA power, and 2 is if we have an emergency that cuts us off from that BPA power. So there's multiple reasons why people wanted it. And I'll just stop there.
Go ahead, Ken. You're muted, I think, Ken.
I was muted. I want to provide my perspective on this because I really appreciate the amount of work that has gone into this. And even though I don't have much more seniority than my fellow commissioners, still I have seen the PUD evolve over a slightly longer period of time. And this really represents the maturation of the organization. So it was something of an abrupt shift that is taking me a little bit of getting used to, because previously the province of the strategic plan had lain with the commissioners, and now it has shifted to the staff, which I have to say is where it belongs, because the important thing in a well-functioning organization is to have leadership buy-in. And what today's presentation represents is really the all-in attitude of the leadership team. So I'm very pleased to see that. I think I would have been less taken aback if I had been aware as the process was evolving of the role of the leadership team and the fact that the commissioners would be then presented with an opportunity to react. I guess it was my expectation that the commissioners would have a little bit more of a role in the formation, but again, I think the important thing is the ownership. I do see some distinctions between being a public entity and being a corporate entity, where the commissioners are elected officials and have a different kind of accountability than a corporate board, which is typically appointed. And I make that distinction because I come from a corporate background and am aware of the processes of strategic planning. But that's a, I want to be clear that that's a minor concern that I have. And overall, I'm very pleased with the product and grateful to the people involved in putting this together, because I think, again, it represents the evolution of the PUD and looking over the actual product itself. There really aren't any significant points that I would disagree with. I think it really represents an outstanding effort on the part of everybody involved, and I will leave it there.
So I want to tag on to Ken there a little bit too. You know, as a member of the Citizen Advisory Board 6 years ago, I've watched a previous commission, which included Commissioner Collins, deal with this issue. I've seen all the turnover in staff, the change of positions, the change of leadership, the growth and experience that's being gained there. And I have to say, again, I want to reiterate, I have been pleasantly surprised with the way this particular process has played out with Ken. The final product is really what I think we need to keep in the sights here. And it is a good product. So with that, I will end there and allow us to move on to the discussion of the draft strategic plan, unless someone else wants to weigh in. All right, so we're going to move on to item number 4, discussion of the draft strategic plan. We're going to go item by item, page by page. Is that the plan, Kirk?
Commissioner, before you move on, I just want to say that I'm sure everybody feels this way, but really appreciate those comments from all three of you.
Thanks, Joel.
Well, you know, Commissioner, I don't have a plan for how you want to go through it. I would, I guess, throw it back to you and the team as to how you would like to discuss in detail. And I'll certainly accommodate whatever you would like to do. I didn't think forward that much in a sense of what next.
So Kevin and his team have got us here. I'd say, Kevin, what would you and your team like to see us do?
So we do have some next steps, and but first off, you know, this is a draft. We have room for commissioners' input, and that's where we think this discussion today should go, is not necessarily bullet by bullet, but where the commissioners would like to see some change or some clarification. Again, staff has had the luxury of spending a lot of time with this. I know this is new to the commission, but the discussion part truly is, where would you like to see some change, be it big or small? this is our starting point. So we're comfortable explaining how we got to here, but the next step is your input. So that's where I'd like to start is, again, not bullet by bullet, but each commissioner saying, okay, these are things I would like to incorporate or take out of the process.
So thanks, Kevin.
I know, Commissioner, if I could speak, I would say that this was the sort of the stage of the process where we wanted commissioner direction. If we're way off, which it sounds like everyone is pleased, but if we were way off, we wanted to be know now before we go start through work plans, et cetera. But maybe the best structure for this would be is just to go to each section, go to the mission statement. We'll start there and just listen to your comments about it and not sort of repeat the process, but and then we at least make sure that we hit each area and with the understanding we can always come back. But let's go to the mission statement and just pull it up and say, what do you guys think?
Thanks,
If
Kirby.
that's a way that I would suggest, but I defer to you.
Yeah, I think that'll be fine with you and Kevin, what you just described. I do want to, right at this point, though, I do know we have only one person from the public on, and that is Jessica. She's our Citizen Advisory Board Chair. Jessica, I'll give you 3 minutes to follow up on this first part before we get into the actual discussion line by line here, if you want 3 minutes. Is she trying to get in, Will, or?
Dan?
Yeah, go ahead, Jessica.
Okay, yeah, it looks great to me. It's it seems to say everything in a very concise, easily understood manner. And so I will yield my time back.
Thanks, Jess. All right, so Kevin, go ahead. We're going to start with the mission statement that's up on the screen, I assume. Unless commissioners, Kevin or Ken. Sorry, Ken, go ahead, Ken.
Personally, I'd like to see the essential utility services identified. That is electric, water, and broadband. The step that the PUD is taking towards becoming an ISP and really fully engaging in the delivery of broadband services throughout Jefferson County, I think warrants the recognition that our mission has expanded and that broadband is as important as anything else that we're doing. It is an essential utility service.
So before Jeff jumps in, Ken, I would like to address that because when we were putting this together, we did have all of the utilities listed, water, electric, and broadband. The discussion became, we did not want to say one division is supported more than the others, because in the past, there has been a history between the water and electric not quite gelling together. So this was a conscious effort to say, okay, all utilities and broadband specifically is in here, but that was the reasoning behind not listing all three utilities. It was to put them on the same footing so that we are utility. We do all utilities. So that was the reasoning behind that.
Jeff, then Scott.
I was just going to echo what Ken said and remind us that we also, even though it's a fledgling little thing, we have sewer as our another leg of our stool too. So I would concur with Ken, and I'm hearing what you're saying, Kevin. So I'll just leave it at that. Don't forget the sewer.
Go ahead, Scott.
I just want to say that mission statement, we started out with a lot. I mean, we started out with multiple sentences, and we needed to bring it down to something that where you can remember that, so people can think about that. we don't want a mission statement that is, 2 pages long. We want it to be small and concise. So I just wanted to pass out.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I think communications and messaging, we will talk about these things and get out. I am more in the camp of keeping essential, leaving that to the person that reads it. One person, it may be more essential to have their power be on than to have broadband. Another may decide that it's more important that their sewer system, and again, bring to Jeff's point, we could very well wind up involved in the local county project to do sewer. We start getting too specific, I think that just leads to more people, wanting to question what is it that we mean. I think using the term essential, everyone can look at that, and whether they're looking for broadband or they're looking for better resiliency in the electric, or they're looking at whether or not we're going to be involved in a community sewer system that the county is going to build. I mean, I think essential stands pretty for itself, that everything we do is essential.
And if I could just add, one of the reasons why we talked about not listing them is just that in the past, we haven't offered all the services we offer today. And in the future, we may offer other services that we're not aware of. We could have, garbage composting bioreactors or some other thing like that that's on the horizon. So just opening up opportunity.
I hear what you're saying. This is, as has been said before, a living document, and no doubt will be all altered as things change. But I think it's an important statement to make, to list the services today. But I do understand and appreciate the need to be concise and not to have several pages of the mission statement. It's just that at this particular point in time, I feel it's important to make a statement about broadband. And that's my final word on it. At least at this point, it's my final word.
So I don't think we have consensus in per se on this. So I don't know where staff and consultants want to go with that. Again, this is our first blush at this. The public, I would hope that we'll get more public input into this in the next couple meetings. So I'm not opposed to changing language or adding this or deleting that maybe as we go through this, but it is a living document. Yes, I agree with that. And maybe it makes sense to start out, to me, a little bit more bare bones and add ornaments to the Christmas tree as we go, not start out with a fully loaded Christmas tree.
Just a question on process. When this is all done, presumably you're going to have the board adopting this through a vote, correct?
Correct.
So what if, and I really love how tight this is. There's not a lot of words, which is nice, little phrases. It makes it much easier to get through, and it makes it more substantive. What if, as we go through this today, we even just put in maybe like a different color parentheses, and you guys could change, do this later, of added or changed language, and we don't have to vote on it today. It's just kind of putting a footnote. Hey, this was brought up. What if we tweaked it to look like this? So for example, there, instead of just saying essential utility services, you could call them out, but just an idea so that we're not losing the feedback we're giving you guys today. It could be a different color. It hasn't been voted on. Just some notes that we had some discussion, we didn't reach consensus, but so we can come back and also let the public kind of weigh in on what we're talking about.
Excellent editing process, Jeff. I agree.
This is Kirk. I think that would be a good process to go through. Having been in the room and worked on all this, and wanting the team wanting to go, I'm giving you perspective here, the team wanting to be collaborative and all as walking as one. Do you put water first? You put sewer first? You put electric first? All those things come into play when you list them, and the importance of broadband does come out in the various goals and objectives. And that's why after a struggle and some vigorous discussion, essential utility services was there. But I appreciate what you're saying, and we should put it back in, because this is the process, and you would be welcome to go through it too. So I think when we list them all out, that's a thing that we can do as we go through this, and maybe the cab would be the one that would say one way or the other.
Jeff, is your hand still up, or do you have another follow-up? Thanks, Kirk. And the cab is another issue that the board will have to take up as we go through this process. Whether or not or how much the cab will be involved I don't think is yet to been decided. So that's probably for the next meeting or our next board meeting to maybe have that discussion. With that, do we want to move off of mission and on to vision, or where are we at?
Values.
Any thoughts on values of what's been listed?
I think they're great. I love it.
Yeah, again, verbiage, maybe, we could be a little bit more explicit in some areas. I think I had some notes maybe somewhere, but there escapes me at the moment by memory of maybe what we could touch on a little bit more. All right, well, I guess we'll move off of values. No one seems to have an opinion. I'm not seeing any hands. So again, we'll revisit all this probably at the next meeting again in similar fashion, I'm assuming, with more public input. Go ahead on vision. Commissioners, any input on the vision? It's pretty straightforward. It's a high, lofty goal. There's a lot of very good utilities out there that we're competing with. We don't generate, so we're not selling our power for 2 cents a kilowatt. So, it might be a tough bar to reach.
Yeah, I when I saw that, there was a couple locations in this document where it says the best, and but at the same time, it's hard to take issue with somebody who's saying we should be the best as a goal. The best utility in the Northwest. I don't know. I'm fine with it. I think I would be happier if it related back more to the citizens of Jefferson County, because for me, it's not that we're the best in the Northwest. It's are we doing what we need to do to best serve our citizens? And I think every utility hopefully is doing that, and what they end up doing by nature is different. So the best utility in the Northwest, yeah, that's cool on one hand, but I also like to keep reminding myself and our customers too. It's like, well, a PUD is a flexible tool. The question is, what do we need here in Jefferson County? And that's how I like to think about it.
Well, I guess we could say that the vision is to be the best utility on the Olympic Peninsula. But I understand what the intention here is. I certainly agree with the second part of the sentence, a leader in our community. I agree with Commissioner Randall that I'd like to see it focused more on our local community. But again, I have no disagreement with the intention. But I'd like to see something that is ideally more grounded locally and even maybe a little bit measurable.
If it's okay, I'm going to jump in here. Part of this discussion, and there was a lot of discussion on our vision statement, but your vision statement should be a lofty goal. And if we are the best utility in the Northwest, we are doing the best for our customers. To me, they go hand in hand. So a lot of discussion on this one. You know, it was, should we be the best in the United States? Should we be best in the peninsula, the Northwest? Those things were talked about, and we want to strive, and we do want to be the best in the Northwest. And it is a very lofty goal. It is hard to attain, but a vision statement is what you're striving for. We will always strive to be better and to be the best utility in our region. So this did have a lot of debate there.
And I'll take the liberty of following up and saying that, you know, the mission statement is the fundamental reason for us existing, and that's to better the lives of our community. That's right there. And the vision is, you know, where we want to be. And much like essential with utility services, the best, it could be best in customer service. It's not always just the cost of generation and power. It's doing the best for what they want, you know. And if everybody wants to go, in a sense, I'll use the example of if they want everything green and everything that we do, well, it's a little more expensive, but it'll be the best to the people that they want. So I think they go all okay, but you know, let's note it and see what we can do to what it results in.
So is there any other discussion on the vision?
I was going to add one thing, Dan, if you don't mind. I had offered up that we could be the best and most humble utility in the Northwest, but it just didn't go together.
Oh, I like that. So maybe we could back up real quick to the values again, Will. I did have a couple thoughts on the values. If we could back up to that one real quick. So, and again, I'm all for keeping things, you know, simple and, you know, not vague, but again, sometimes maybe we do need to be a little bit more descriptive, and a couple of them, you know, like service driven, that's only half of it to a certain extent. I think customer satisfaction plays into that a little bit. And I don't know if this document, you know, kind of captures customer satisfaction. We talk about service a lot, but whether or not customer satisfaction should maybe be something we shout out to tell the public that we're listening, and that is one of our goals or values. That, you know, and that gets to Ken's point about having the community buy in and telling the community we know they're there, we're listening, that maybe that's a place in the values that we can, you know, if it doesn't happen in the mission or the vision, that maybe that's a place where we can reiterate to the community that their satisfaction in what we're doing is noted and noticed. So that's one thought I had there on the service driven. And a couple others real quick on the solution oriented. I'm definitely in favor of that. I think maybe one more aspect of that is, and again, I don't know if we get far enough through the document to say we are going to use specific metrics. You know, it's one thing to say we're solution oriented, but what metrics are we going to rely on to make that happen? And I don't know if the document captures that. And again, I don't want to add on a whole bunch of different places, but if we stay up front and with the simple term metrics, you know, that covers a lot of ground throughout the document. So again, that's one place where one or two more words could very well help us to alleviate a lot of language further in the document. And then integrity and respect, again, great values. I would add, as part of that, you know, we want to be professional, you know, whether it's internally or externally. You know, professionalism is maybe another word that should maybe show up somewhere a little more often. But if we put it in up front, that tells people that definitely is a value and a goal, that we are going to be professional as best we can in every aspect of what we do. So that's just 3 points I had on the values part of it. Very simple, couple words to add that maybe help us alleviate more language further down throughout the document.
I don't know if I can speak right now or not.
Any other thoughts?
Quick
Ken.
thought. I agree with the comments that Commissioner Tupper has made. It strikes me that act with integrity needs to stand alone, and respect needs to be qualified as to whom we are respecting.
Yeah, I think that plays into kind of what I said, Ken, that we can make a few words here up front that maybe really help us later on. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, and the word professional, I really. Let's see, we get the phone corralled there. Thank you. The word professional is, I remember when I met with Kevin early on when he was becoming the manager, that was my number one litmus test with all actions of the PUD and how staff is presenting themselves and the decisions we're making. Are we professional about this? So I really like that word. If it needs any additional clarification, it's great, but I love professional.
Thanks, Jeff. Anybody else want to weigh in while we're here? Jess, since you're the only real person from the public, I'm not excluding you, Cammie, but you're on the clock. Go ahead, Jessica, if you could.
Sure. I'm not sure, maybe this is addressed in responsive and engaged, but I don't see anything that to me speaks to as strong as communicative, available to the community. It's kind of like this meeting. You're saying that you hope in future meetings that we'll have more of the public here. And I don't know how much of this has been put out to the public, like in a newsletter or something. So I'm not really sure, but it seems that there should be something here about, that one of our values is to be in constant communication with what we're doing. And obviously that's way too much verbiage, but it would, if somebody can come up with something like that, I think that it would be good, because I think it's a very strong value that we have, that we communicate with the customers.
Thanks, Jessica.
This is Kirk. Those are all good comments, but I would throw that in the work openly and transparently, that it's all out there, that the work that the PUD does is out there for everybody to see. I think of it as being into that category, but it could be just, again, an issue of the right words.
Maybe we just add to that what you just said, Kirk, and just add community buy-in or input, or just a couple real quick words to shout out that, yes, we are, again, reiterating that we hear you, we see you, public. We are always constantly thinking about that part of the equation. So again, we got some stuff there inked up that people can see and listen to some of the discussion we've had if they want to elaborate or chime in later on in the process. With that, let's go ahead and jump back, Will, to whatever page we were on that was next up.
We were starting the goals.
Okay, any input from commissioners on the goals? Again, keeping in mind, we're looking at this through the prism of what staff, and our consultants are looking at for the course of the utility as an organization. I would argue probably more internally than externally is where the focus probably is here. I don't think I had anything to add to this particular part, because again, coming from staff, I felt they knew the needs of the utility through their own insights, as well as the commissioners could ever hope to. So. Staff, anybody want to weigh in? Commissioners?
This is Jeff. I don't have any comments. I think this is a fine list.
Okay, I guess we can, I don't see any other hands, so I'd say go ahead and move on to the next page.
If I could take the liberty of just suggesting, the team think about at organizational goals is where it says maintain customer service levels. That might be where we could add in some of that customer satisfaction.
What I was going to say, and I didn't realize I was muted, possibly maintain customer service levels that meet or exceed customer needs and expectations.
Yeah, I'm fine with that language.
Again, that's more aspirational.
Sorry, baby.
Somebody unmuted?
Maybe that's Jessica.
I laid down on my cat. So was apologizing to her.
Thanks, Jess. So anything else on organizational goals beyond Commissioner Collins's suggestion there? Okay, I guess we can move to the next slide. Organization objectives. Again, we're somewhat looking through the prism of what staff felt was important. I guess this is, do the commissioners disagree with staff and our consulting group on whether or not this is where we should be focusing? I think staff is demonstrating, like I said, a high level of, where they're going and what they want to do and how they want to do it. I'm happy with what I've seen so far.
This looks fine to me.
Agreed.
So now we're getting into Mike's territory, right? Financial, is that the next step here? So it looks, well, again, this is only the goals, so I guess we still have the objectives to look at it as well. It seemed like maybe this was a pretty small, tight list, which again, less is better sometimes. Is there anybody that thinks that maybe there should be any other goals here? I mean, I didn't really think about it too hard and too long, but it just seemed to me it was a kind of a short list of goals. Do we need another goal? Make sure Mike's earning his pay.
I'm good with this.
All right, I guess.
Yeah, I'm good with it too.
Okay, so let's move on to financial objectives. Keeping in mind that we do have a finance and a risk management policies. So again, as I said earlier, there are other policies and processes we have that are going to complement, or harmonize with this plan. So I think a lot of stuff is captured in those other two documents that we don't necessarily need to add into this list.
I just have a quick question about why the Clean Energy Transformation Act is called out. That doesn't even apply to us right now, does it?
Well, but it probably will shortly, though. I mean, we're already seeing compliance issues that we have to do with taxes and tracking and that sort of thing. If staff wants to jump in, or maybe Joel has some insight to that, I'm guessing that's why that's there.
I'm just curious where it came from and a little more about that.
Yeah,
It came from because it's on the horizon and it's to monitor and plan for potential costs. So it's really the heads up of understanding that it's out there and making sure that we're ready should it affect us. But go ahead, Joel.
So it sounds like it's really more of the kind of be a forward-looking organization. This is something that's out there.
yeah, and it's a good point. I mean, maybe we don't need to specifically call out CETA, but we want to be aware that, in particular, CETA will apply to us in some way, shape, or form. It also ties into your prior mentioning, Jeff, about local power, local generation, and how that plays in. But just more of a heads up that this is on a forward-looking basis will affect the PUD and will affect its finances.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing, it just sounds kind of negative too. It's like potential costs, and there's also opportunities. When you're talking about local power. I'll leave it at that.
True.
Yeah, but from a financial standpoint, I think we have to prepare people for the negative more than the positive. The positive, you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And I think that's kind of the mentality we should be thinking about as we have to implement those plans, because right out the gate, it's probably going to be more negative than it will be positive from my financial viewpoint. Anything else? When I went through it, I thought this was a fairly good set of objectives.
Ken's got his hand up.
Go
Yeah,
ahead, Ken.
I'm actually going to suggest deleting a few words. The very first bullet point, I think if you said report monthly financial results and monitor revenues to meet financial goals, you've made the point effectively.
Yeah, I guess the only question was, does that affect the context or the content in a way that changes the intent?
No, this is Kirk speaking. I don't think so. And it also, less is better.
Yeah, I'm fine with the wordsmithing. No problems at all. Any other comments on financial objectives? And make sure staff, feel free to jump in here if you have any background that you think the commissioners need as we go through these things.
I was just
All
going
right.
to add, Gene,
Go ahead.
Gene, I know you've had to make some changes or do some things to plan for CETA. I was wondering if you wanted to jump in.
Sure. Currently, we have had to change how our daily process for our low income program. We have to track energy burden. And beginning in February of 2022, we have to start reporting to Department of Commerce on some specifics for our program. And then down the road, this is a little while down the road, we have to actually meet certain reductions in energy burden for all of our customers. So that means that we're going to have to possibly increase the amount of funding we put into our low income program. And that's just a few things. There's a lot more, and spent a couple hours yesterday on a meeting about that. So that's all I've got. Jeff?
Gene, could you just say what the state means by reduce the energy burden on our low income customers? Because I'm thinking this, and we don't need to get too far into this, but I just want to understand what you just said. And it sounds like I would guess that could mean a lower bill from assistance through low income money that's directly reducing their bill, or reducing their bill by they got some energy conservation work done on their place. Their place is more energy efficient. Does that include both those things?
It does.
Other stuff?
It does. There are a lot of measures that are going to be put into this. And so through energy conservation, weatherization, and direct credits to their account or discounts. So that'll all go into it. And energy burden needs to be, their cost of energy needs to be 6% or less of their annual income. And that is what we need to get to, or at least close, as close as we can.
Is that by 2020, Gene?
I
Or
think it's like
2030. I'm sorry.
Yeah, 2030. I think it's like
Yeah.
we have to improve by 15% by 2030.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gene. Any more background from staff that commissioners should be aware of as we look at the objectives? All right, I think we're ready to, I don't see any hands, so I think we're ready to move on. Okay, operational goals. Again, staff, if there's any background you think is relevant with this, it'd be a good time to put it forward. So that anyone that listens to the audio has that information if they, at the next meeting, if we don't come up with anything ourselves, that it may trigger someone at the next meeting to have a question on this particular topic. All right, I'm not seeing any hands. Let's just keep the ball rolling and move on to operational objectives. Quite a few objectives there. I don't think we missed anything. The question is, are we maybe being a little too proactive at what the objective should be? Keeping in mind that we have a finance policy, a risk management policy, a procurement policy, a tree trimming and vegetation policy, and that's the short list. I know there's more. Customer service. I mean, the operation objectives need to be stated to this extent. Is everybody happy with that? I'm again, less is always better, but is this the right level?
Well, Commissioner, this is Kirk. For the benefit of the listening audience, I'll say, a lot of these things, when they looked at them, the leadership team, as we were going through the process, it was a collective effort. So, and it's not just on the operations. Everyone is on the leadership teams involved in some of these, and that's probably how this one got a little longer. But I mean, this team is digging in and wanting to move forward with the vision, and I think this is sort of an example of that.
No, that's great background, Kirk. All right, I don't see any other hands. Let's go ahead and move along. We got about 25 minutes left, so I think we're on pace to get in under time. Rate goals. Now, this is a discussion we had here just recently about, with what's going to happen with our 2028 contracts and the BP22 and the BP24 with our PPC. When we talk with PPC and in our board meetings, is there anything with this rate goals? I know Jeff talked earlier about rates. Is this one that we want to bang around a little bit? Go ahead, Will.
Oh, I was just going to make a suggestion based on earlier conversation that maybe we move rate goals immediately after finance and before operations.
Well, Jeff's nodding yes. So
yeah, I think that would help if we don't want to reiterate the things that we're saying regarding efficiencies and so forth. I think if we put them together, that makes the connection better. Otherwise, I think we need to say something about it somewhere.
And again, I would maybe this is a place where I would say adding some sort of a reference to metrics and cost of service studies, maybe something like that is in order to tell people, that's some of our goals too. They're metrics, they're procedures or processes, but they really are kind of goals too that we want to aspire, to, have those processes in place for looking at contracts and looking at the rates and how those two things maybe meld together. Because we are looking at the contract is in that 3 to 5 year window here. So that it would fit into being part of strategic planning, but I'm not exactly sure what kind of verbiage that should be or if it's even necessary at this point.
I think maybe there should be something here that speaks to customers' understanding of any rate changes. And I know we talk about transparency, but maybe something more specific so that it's clear that a primary goal of the utility is to make sure that customers understand if there has to be a rate increase, why that was decided by the board.
And I think that term cost signals is intended to do that, but that's pretty dry accountant, kind of language, it'd be nice to, as Ken is saying, make that a little less dry and more about why. I agree.
Yeah, cost signals suggest an intent to get customers to use less of a particular service for environmental purposes or supply purposes. So that's different.
This is Kurt. If I could speak for some background on that, the provide cost signals to customers goes hand in glove with instead of reducing use, the words efficient use was. And what this signal is to let the customer know, if you do this, this is the result. Not to say you should or should not do it, but if you want to use it efficiently, like for example, when you have time of use rates, you want to do your wash at night. Those kind of things. But if you want to do it during the day and you have to, understand that's the consequence. So it's more of a educational, if you do this, then this is what results.
And I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly okay with that. My point was that there needs to be something specific to communication to customers so that they understand why rates have to go up.
That exact line kind of is in rate objectives. It's the next slide down. So we can move it up to here, but it is in the next slide, Will.
Yeah, before you move on, Will, I would add one more bullet to the goals, and maybe it goes under objectives instead, and that is defined metrics. I think that should be a goal, is having defined metrics. Now, we don't have to put all of them there. They fall in other places, but we should call it out in the document that we realize and understand that the component of our goals or our objectives is to have some defined metrics.
And for the benefit of the audience, what do you mean by defined metrics concerning what?
Well, and this comes into the communication and the messaging of why rates are going to do what they're going to do, or why we need to have a cost of service study, because what are the impacts that we're going to be facing to deal with rates, and what are those things that we're looking at that help us make those determinations. We're telling people that this is the things we have to look at. It's not just any one particular item. Like I know we're talking right now about just passing through a decrease from Bonneville, a proposed or perceived decrease. It may not be that simple. We have to show the math and have some metrics to say, here's how we came to this conclusion, or here's why we made that statement. So I think that's a way to get people to understand there's always more to the picture maybe than they realize. And metrics are the way you're going to have to do that.
Is that different than the first goal where it says maintain rates that cover the cost of service and satisfy PUD's financial metrics and debt covenants?
Well, I think financial metrics are a little different than rate metrics. I know the two combined, but I think there is a little bit of a difference there, but that's just my opinion. Maybe Mike or Kevin want to weigh in on, is there a distinction between the two, or even you, Joel? You listen to a lot of what's going on out there in relationship to the rate cases and all that. So
the rates, from my perspective, the rates are set or changed based on financial metrics. That's really the driving force, because there's in your financial metrics is the cost of power, it's the cost of labor, it's all those things. So from my standpoint, Dan, I think you're covered in the financial metrics, because the rate studies are based on everything financial.
Well, I want to throw in there, when you look at, again, we're getting off topic a little, but when you look at resource adequacy and how that issue will be dealt with, that covers a wide range of areas. And I think there is a distinction between the metrics you use for financial and the metrics that you may have to look at for doing the rates, because there's things that affect rates that aren't necessarily financial.
If I could just suggest, I think you might be getting tied up on the word metrics, and if you look at the objectives at the last, educate customer on rate structures, and maybe you throw in rate adjustments and conservation measures. What I hear the commissioner saying is he wants to show the ABCs and more of the how-to, why the adjustment is needed, as opposed to what you might get caught up on what is a metric and what is not. It's really an education and explanation of transparent of nature that shows why that adjustment is necessary. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I was hearing you say.
No, thank you, Kirk. You captured that better than I ever did with everything I just said. So yeah, I'm happy with working a few words in somewhere that, you know, if we could do that. But, you know, again, a living document, we can work on this the next go around, or, you know, a year from now when we review it.
Dan, would you be okay if we put that under rate objectives, not necessarily goals? Because I do think it belongs more in the objectives, or do you want it in the goals? Or
I don't have a preference, as long as we get that across to people that there are, you know, there's more than just financial metrics involved when you start talking about rates.
And I would just substitute the word variables and components for metrics as he uses it. There's a lot more that goes into making an adjustment than just, do we need the money?
And while you guys are all here, did you want to move rates up to follow finances or not? It's an easy edit to make.
Yeah, I'm fine with whatever. Was that Jeff's suggestion? I forget now.
Yeah, it was Will's suggestion, but I think that works well. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
We had talked about where that placing should be on rates in our discussions also.
So we capture everything where we want it to be now, and are we ready? We're on to objectives, aren't we? Okay, I'll answer that question. I didn't see the screen change. Rate objectives. We've already discussed it a little bit. Any other thoughts or background from staff? Not seeing any hands, so it looks like maybe we can move off of rates and on to communications. Will, any insight or background, since this is your bellywick? Do you want to give us any more insight or information?
I don't have much more to add.
This is Kirk. I think we should take note of one of the commissioner's comments about the dog wagging the tail and looking at the last goal, and maybe we just need to work on that in a sense of working with the community partners to get the public PUD message out. So I think we just make that one color it, and then we'll get back to it.
Thank you, Kirk. I was just waiting to see if anybody had anything to say before I reiterated it. All right, I'm not seeing any hands or hearing any other comments, so we'll move on to objectives. Again, a fairly lengthy list, but for communications, I think this is a place where more is better. The more we talk about this and the more, you know, bullets we have, probably the better off we're going to be.
Well, you know, for perspective in the background on the discussion, it was recognized that we were doing a pretty good job out there, but there's areas where there's need fine tuning, or we could do a little better. And so the more detail was needed. I think that's the way I would summarize the conversation.
Yeah, I think this is a really good list as a starting point. As we see how we implement this plan and other policies and decisions we make moving forward, I'm sure that this is one that will get adjusted, just looking at how the commissioners have discussed communications just in the last couple of meetings. So that's my thoughts on that one. Anybody else? I really do think we actually need again, I don't want to tack more on to staff, and I know we got a lot on our plates and we'll continue to it. I really think a communications plan and policy is something that we are going to be looking at here in the near future as things start to calm down and we put things, put things to bed like the strategic plan. So again, anybody else on communication objectives? All right, I guess we're going to move on to conservation and stability. Is Jeff still with us?
I am here.
I know that this was one you brought up earlier, Jeff. Is there anything here that you want to reiterate or add or detract?
I think it was in it was in objectives, but let's see.
You mentioned something about the local power.
About local power, because local power was a big part of why we're here, the yes vote. So we've got aligned PUD policies to reflect community attitudes regarding efficient use of resources, but there's nothing about generation of local power.
And for the audience and my perspective from being back in those days, I felt that the thrust of the community was more for local control. Now, that the logical extension of that is, and we want our power locally. I'll give that. But I think of as the thrust in the beginning was, we want to control this. We want better service. We want better reliability. And, as an aside, I think we're well on our way.
I don't think you can just ignore it like that, Kirk. I mean, it was local control, local jobs, local power. It was the simplest campaign ever. And while getting BPA power, access to BPA power as compared to the power mix that PSE was offering for people, and not everybody cares where their power comes from. A lot of them are just about, hey, what's the lowest rate? Or is there somebody real when I have a problem that I can talk to, as opposed to they're off in Bellevue someplace, I can actually go talk to a real body here. So I think those things were big. But the people who were interested in energy were looking at the power, which is a lot of people were looking at the power mix that PSE provided and looking at BPA's power as being cleaner and better. That was a big part of it. But they were also looking at, hey, we're out here on the peninsula. It just takes one earthquake and we've got nothing. And who knows how long that can be. And we should be doing an even better, it's local power is also about local jobs. So I think we have to recognize that phrase, local power, was part of the campaign that got us to where we are today. So I don't think we can dismiss it.
You're both right. And I agree with Jeff on this one. I think this is something that we can put in here because we got an email from Kevin the other day about grants for community solar. I think this is something we should let the public know. Again, we're communicating through this document that this is something that's on our radar. We're listening, and it's not a guarantee of anything, but it's a fact that we are listening and understand the need or the wish for this kind of stuff. So I'm in favor of what you have there with generation of local power. I don't know if it acts more like a question, the way obviously with the question mark. Maybe there's a little bit better wording that says it definitely is something that we are, I won't even say committed to. Committed to might be too strong of a word, but that we are definitely, it is in the mix and it's on our radar.
How about explore is a nice word, because that's kind of like what makes sense. Does it work? Somehow work that in there.
Explore local power opportunities.
Exactly.
Good.
I think that's some good wordsmithing.
One small suggestion. I think the third point, if you say optimize the use of the PUD services, that cuts redundancy because it entails efficient use.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Thank you.
So just a time check, we're at 10 minutes left to go before noon, and I think this was the last page of bullets. Anybody have anything further? And again, this has been a pretty good meeting. I think we've been pretty efficient and made some good observations and comments and corrections and additions. Anybody again,
And we just
go
have
ahead.
one more page. So this goes with the conservation and sustainability. This is the objectives.
Oh, sorry, Jeff.
Yeah,
I thought we got to it.
No, we hadn't gotten this one yet.
So
I think
did you have a thought?
I think by adding local power into goals, I think you can consider that within sustainability programs. So now that we've called it out, I'm good with it.
Yeah, like you say, we're going to have a couple more blushes at this, even though in a lot of ways, it seems to me like the commission and staff have, kind of in a lot of agreement here, but I'm not considered redundant, but I know we're going to have some, we need to have some to give the community plenty of opportunity, to see that we want to be transparent and that we're looking for input. So having said that, again, I'm fine with that last part. I see Ken nodding yes. Okay, so go ahead, Jessica.
Well, thanks a lot. And Dan, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate so fully today. One of the things that I thought should have been under the organization objectives, and I was waiting to see if it was going to come under something else, is a succession plan. And I didn't see that anywhere here in this strategic plan, and I think it's something that should be included. And just my final point is that with respect to communications and to this process with the strategic plan, it may be helpful to have something in an upcoming newsletter prior to another meeting where you would be discussing this. I think you may get more public participation that way. And that's all I have. And thank you. And thanks to everybody who put this together. It's an excellent presentation, very comprehensive. And I know you put a lot of time and energy into it. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jessica. And yeah, your point's well taken. Again, we have other areas, and I would point again to the managers' responsibilities and goals as a place. Our organization chart and structure, that's another thing we're working on. How much that should or shouldn't be in the strategic plan for succession planning is probably subjective and debatable as to whether or not we should really call that out. I agree with you. It's on my list of things we need to discuss. I didn't bring it up today, but since you did, it's out there now. So that's something we can discuss maybe next time. Also emergency management response and preparation and that sort of thing as well is another area that we don't really talk about here, but that's why we have a risk management policy. So again, as this is out there, for everybody to see now, it's hard to say what kind of responses and feedback we're going to get. So again, thanks, Jess. Anybody else? Any more? Oh, Will, I see your hand up.
Yeah, the one thing that occurred to me is this somewhere we want to call out something about EVs? Just because I get a lot of questions about it, and Jeff and I attended a meeting about it yesterday, and it seems like this might be a place to add something in about EV support, if that's the desire of the commission.
That's an interesting point. We didn't bring that up. I mean, plan to reduce PUD's carbon footprint. Did we talk about helping our customers reduce their carbon footprint? Let's see. Is that anywhere in the goals or objectives?
No.
That's an interesting one. And this whole issue of helping the county, because the big carbon emission for the county is the biggest one is transportation, helping promote the idea of converting to electric transportation. I don't know. I think it ought to be in here someplace because it's a big state goal. It's our biggest carbon emission. I think it'd be nice to have it in there someplace where right now we're talking about how could the PUD help promote some low cost electric vehicle charging in the county that, some of our bigger customers would actually pay for, but we'd be helping implement it. So I think it'd be nice to have in there.
Again, when we start to get too specific and calling out one sector or things like that, it opens up the door of who else is going to want to get named or have their issue or their priority or whatever put forward. So I think reducing the carbon footprint, it's pretty well known out there that the transportation sector is 40% of the problem. I don't know that we need to necessarily call out one part of transportation, but to just say, that we recognize that the transportation sector is part of reducing that carbon footprint. I'd be happier with that than just calling out necessarily EV. There's 500 EVs in a county. We have 20,000 customers. That's about 2.5% of our customer base. Yeah, it's a goal for the state, but I don't know that necessarily requires us to be calling that out by itself.
Actually, I think transportation is 60% of our local carbon emissions, but I wouldn't have a problem with that, of talking about helping this county reduce its transportation carbon emissions, because that includes EVs. And you're right, it can be more than that, but I think we should talk about it someplace.
Yeah, because I know Transit is talking about it and they're doing things. So again, it's a broader subject than just one particular item that leads towards it. So when you start to pick out just one, then everybody's going to want to know why we didn't do another. So I think more of a generic, transportation is an issue and a focus for us, whether it's with our own fleet. We take steps ourselves internally. We can message that, communicate that to the public. Here's what we're doing, just like Transit would, just like the county would, the port, whoever.
But getting back to
maybe there's a way of folding that in by implication. If you said develop and fund additional conservation and sustainability programs throughout Jefferson County, that it may not be specific enough to satisfy everyone, but in my mind, that's the direction it points to.
I have to see that in writing, Ken. That was a mouthful.
I guess I think the transportation sector in this county, it's a big deal. It's a big issue. It seems like we could just say somewhere, help reduce the carbon intensity of our transportation in Jefferson County, something like that, or helping electrify our transportation sector in this county, which again refers back to one of our primary business models, which is selling electricity.
Will?
Yes.
Your hand is up. I thought maybe you wanted to say something.
No, sorry, I just didn't take it down. My apologies.
Commissioner Collins?
Yes. And actually, I'm fine with adding something more specific about the electrification of the transportation sector in Jefferson County. Something like support electrification of transportation locally.
Brilliant. Encompasses a lot.
All right. So any other comments? Your hand's still up. And any other comments on this item or the document? Because we're down to about 2 minutes left of meeting here. Actually, 1 minute according to my clock. So if not, I'll thank staff, consulting, legal, everybody, commissioners. This was a great meeting. I think we really set the stage for getting this thing finalized and the public to get their 2 cents in, and for us to get the message out.
I'll just say staff is making us look good, which is what your jobs are. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for your close attention to this.
All right, one last